Well, as our member who gave the testimonial this morning, Emily, had mentioned, one of the things that people are most afraid of in the entire world is standing up in front of a group of people like you talking. Sometimes more afraid of that than death itself. And so when it bombs and everything goes wrong, it's like your nightmares are being fulfilled. I read a story a couple of weeks ago from the comedian Jim Carrey about when he was getting started in his career, that's exactly what happened to him the first time he ever tried comedy. He was 15 years old, going to a comedy club in Toronto. His mom was supporting him as a teenager in this new vision of what he wanted to do with his life, and so she bought him a polyester suit to wear, because that's what she saw people wearing on the Dean Martin celebrity roasts. So there he is, a 15-year-old kid in a brand new polyester suit, standing on stage in a comedy club with only adults around him, trying stand-up comedy for the first time and failing so miserably that they started playing on a speaker where he could hear it, Jesus Christ Superstar, where they're singing, "Crucify him, crucify him." The manager of the club, while he was doing stand-up for the first time, a 15-year-old kid was into the mic on the speaker saying, "Boring, totally boring," over and over again. So he bombed. And it was a rough first go. And he said that he was grateful for this because that's just what being a comedian is like. And he got a real, unvarnished introduction into that world. He also said it taught him a lot about resilience and courage, and that he was, in fact, alive after it was over. Just barely, but alive. It seems like there's a recurring nightmare or anxiety dream that a lot of us have, that something just like that is going to happen to us. You know the dream. There's a presentation due at school and nobody told you about it, even though you graduated high school 40 years ago. There's a presentation at work and it's just up to you, but you forgot and didn't do your preparation. And normally, you also forgot pants. Preachers have this dream about sermon anxieties in which it's your Sunday to preach and nobody told you. In my version of this dream, I'm preaching, but nobody is listening. Just talking over it all the time. I'll work through it with my therapist, don't worry. But it seems like something in that dream is so universal to us that we all have some version of it, where we just bomb. And one thread that seems to go through all those, whether it's your homework is due and you didn't know, or you've got the presentation, or you're the preacher or the musician, or whatever you're doing in public, is if I show up and it's just me, that's not enough. If I show up and I don't know my lines, and I haven't prepared well, and I have to face the people who can change my career trajectory or the people that I love, and it is just me, that is very much not okay. We're entering a sermon series for the next few weeks around the theme of enough in our lives, because when we ask church members in this year on being human what keeps them up at night, scarcity was one of the key things. Scarcity of resources in the world. Will my kids inherit a world where people fight over water? Is there enough love to go around? Do I have enough time in the day to attend to things that matter or the people that I love? And fundamentally, the question that a lot of people ask is, am I enough? Just me. I think we ask that question because so often the systems of families and churches and political parties and nations and businesses have been fine answering that question for us. But the answer is no, of course you're not enough. Or else why would you need me? God doesn't love you. Not yet. But God might love you if you pray this way, if you sacrifice this way, if you give this way, if you believe this way, but even then, keep coming back just in case. A lot of the systems that we've made meaning in, our identities, our understanding of where our value comes from, who we are at a cellular level, are kind of unraveling in this era, and many of those are good things. Traditional family structures that told you who you were and what your role in a family are going away, thank God. A lot of religious structures that told you who you were and where you got your value are unraveling, thank goodness. A lot of the old sense of patriotism or nationalism that said you are the land you were born in is going away. Some people are fighting against that. But a lot of the systems that used to give us a sense of where our value are no longer thriving. And into that vacuum, other systems have come in, and they still answer, no, you're not enough. The idol of consumerism that says, are you kidding me? If you were enough, you wouldn't need this lipstick. But if you buy this from me, you will feel better for just long enough to get me to produce another thing that you can buy to make you feel just enough better to continue this cycle. Of course you're not enough, or you wouldn't need what I'm selling. The political system that says, of course you're not enough, or else you wouldn't need me to lead you. Be quiet while I take care of work. The family system, or the consultant across the table from us in a business setting who we're desperately trying to please, even though we're paying them. So often I have found in my life that I believe these stories far too long. In a religious setting, we are trying to turn that on its head entirely and form different measuring tools to determine when we matter and how much. One of the things I love inheriting from the progressive Christian branch in this church is the Jesus idea that everybody has a seat at the table, no matter if you like it or not. That the kingdom of heaven on earth, the beloved community in which God's love is made most tangibly present, is going to show up in really poor, sick, dirty people. On the outcast of society, marginalized, ill, and in pain, and that's where it's happening. The brilliant thing about that system is that it also includes, by definition, somebody that you don't want in it. He says not only does it include the sick and the outcast and the oppressed, but it also has to include the tax collector for the evil empire that helped oppress you, and the Roman soldier, and so on and so on. It, by definition, includes someone that someone else doesn't want to include. We got universalism out of that. The notion in our tradition that God loves you and there's nothing you can do about it. That you are predestined to go to heaven, is what they would say. They were Calvinists, except reverse Calvinists. You should start loving your enemies now, because you have to be in heaven with them forever. That's a lovely idea. God loves you. The rest of us, God loves you. Here's the interesting thing about that system is that in that system, there's nothing you can do ever to lose the love of the divine. There's not a mistake you could make, a job you can get fired from, a relationship that ends, a thing you say you shouldn't have said, nothing you can do to lose being worthy of love. However, if that's true, then it means that there's also nothing you can do to earn it. If you can't lose it, there's nothing you can do that makes you worthy of it either. It just is. And yet I find myself chasing the next big project at work, being the best father, trying to exemplify roles and performances, and knowing that one day I'm going to forget my lines and bomb. But I've chased, as I imagine a lot of you have, my sense of worth after my successes, and by definition, to keep that going, I have to replicate them or exceed them over and over again. And so in this counterintuitive way, I've also found through my experience that it is not my success that helps me feel valuable, but how I respond to the moments that are fragile and broken and frayed, where kindness and mercy show up. I grew up in the self-esteem era for kids, where my elementary school teacher and Mr. Rogers told me I was fantastic. And I am. But here's the problem with that. If I'm great, how do I explain my failures? How do I explain when things fall apart? Or I've made a big mistake, or my life feels like it's coming apart at the edges. If I'm so great, what do I do with that? As Anne Lamott said in the reading that we read this morning together, mercy and kindness exist by definition because something went wrong. You cannot forgive or be forgiven unless something happened. You cannot know compassion without the existence of suffering. And sometimes you only know what true kindness looks like when you have lost everything. One of the things that helps me when I'm afraid of others, of a congregation, or the consultant across the table, or whoever it is, and I'm feeling like I have to prove that I'm somehow okay, is to imagine them as an infant child. Remembering that every person I've ever met, no matter how kind or rude, no matter how powerful or afraid, was once hopefully held lovingly in the arms of someone who cared for them and fed them and cleaned them. And that same person that I am afraid of, trying to prove my value to, will, if they're lucky, grow old and get sick and die. Every single person. And that to pretend that any one of us collection of molecules is more perfect or holy or righteous is an illusion of cosmic proportions. That every single person you've ever met, ever, is struggling in some way that you do not understand. Our value does not come from perfecting ourselves and getting our lines and giving a good performance. Sometimes it comes from busting the illusion that the performance exists at all. In the Buddhist cosmology, there is in some versions a being, the Bodhisattva of compassion, whose name is Avalokiteshvara. And what she does is travel throughout all time and space, helping other people experience compassion and healing until there's no longer the need for compassion and healing, until all beings are free, which is a long time from now. And there is a creature who is also her, but not her. That's how it works in the system. If you flip the coin, the other side of who she is, named Mahakala, the great death, or the one who is greater than death. Mahakala is ugly and fierce, like an ogre with boils on his skin, and he stands with multiple heads on a pile of corpses with a sword that he uses to slash through all illusion and ignorance. I've been talking to him a lot lately in my life. And in exercises and spiritual disciplines, asking him what he thinks about things I'm struggling with. His response is usually, well, what's real? What's real? This cosmology assumes that you can't have real compassion, real love for yourself, real kindness, unless you get rid of the illusions that tell you you're not measuring up. Unless you destroy the measurement tools that are false by their very nature. Think of all the roles we play. The suits we wear and the jobs we take, these funny clothes that we wear, how dare I get to say whether you have value or not? I can tell you that you do, but it's not my right to do so. Think of the ways we feel valuable if doctor is in front of our names, or reverend, if we have a job title or a fancy house or a bank account that looks good for now, or we're healthy. All of those markers of value are illusions. They will one day fade. And if your value is based on those things, there's going to be a moment of reckoning. Every job you've ever had is a job that you will one day retire from, leave, or get fired from. And you will have to discover who you are without it. Every relationship of love that you've ever been in will end by separation or death. And so to know a piece of yourself worth loving that is not only defined by that is life's work. Your bank account and your health, all of these things are temporary. And sometimes, if you're getting good feedback from the world, if you're getting your lines right and people are clapping your performance, it actually doesn't mean you're being yourself. It just means you're following a comfortable script that other people like for you. It just means you're staying in your place, not changing enough to make other people feel uncomfortable. So if you're doing this right, if you are growing and striving to be a more loving person, if you want to change and develop and grow your spirit, one day, by definition, you won't know your lines anymore. And you're going to bomb in public. Because if you're growing fast enough, you will not be prepared for the next chapter of your life. And when you're too big for that script, when you're too big for that role, how other people in your life respond to that and how you respond to yourself will teach you a lot. Your value as a person is not defined by knowing your lines or your job title or your bank account. We come from a tradition that says that God loves you no matter what you do. And yet, counterintuitively, I've found that the places where I experience the most self-respect and self-regard and kindness have been the fragile places, where by definition I was asked to love myself and others anyway. Pay attention to those places too. If there's a place in you that wishes things were different, that feels unloving or unlovable, and you can recognize it, if there's a place in you that feels unfinished or unvarnished, pay attention to that too, because it is crying out for a different life and telling you that there's a soul left to grow. That is a very healthy and good thing. It is not my job to tell you, nor my right, that you are worthy of the love of God or others. But it's still true. It's not my job or right to tell you that the world's definitions of where you get your value are a sham, but they are. Your value will not come from performing well, but by breaking the illusion that the performance exists at all. There are no lines, and there is no test. There's the possibility to love and be kind while we still have time. May you know that you are worthy this day and all days. Amen.